Today I invite you to travel through time with me. We'll review the 60 years of technological evolution together to see if it truly changed anything. As you might guess, I already had the top Dyson model from our generation featuring the famous laser. And by searching a bit on Le Bon Coin, I also managed to find a gem from the 60s that apparently literally floats in the air. And indeed, it looks like a flying saucer with a pretty original design. We could release the same thing today using different materials and I think people would still like it. Stay until the end of the video and I'll reveal an even older model, though we can't test it. Let's get straight to the point with this beauty straight out of the 60s, the Hoover Constellation. So yes, it's gotten a bit dusty, but believe me, it's still in good condition. It's by far the heaviest model. At almost 10 kilos, it's 3 times heavier than the Dyson. But fortunately, it makes up for it in another way, since its bag capacity is very large at 4 liters. Fortunately, because otherwise moving it around would be really complicated, but Hoover's solution to this weight problem is pretty out there. It actually floats above the ground. You're not dreaming. See, the engineers at the time had the brilliant idea to use the air expelled by the motor to create a sort of cushion underneath, like a kind of hovercraft. Apparently, it could climb walls, or so I heard. As you can see, I've spread ultra-fine ground coffee all around the room to test the suction and small rice particles to test its cereal power, to see how it handles larger pieces, but we're also going to put a lot of confetti in there. Ah, that's a fail. Let's try that again. Ready, 3, 2, 1, woo. So, let me tell you, there's quite a lot to vacuum up. It's literally a mess here. Well, it's not like there's that much. The video is going to be nice, right? But that's not all. I made sure to put them pretty much everywhere to create a sort of obstacle course, a vacuum cleaner challenge. That will allow us to see which one is truly the most maneuverable. And I'll also test their noise level. Since that's a key feature and we generally want to avoid it being too noisy, I suggest we open it now. For that, there's a kind of clip at the back that you just need to release, and here's what it looks like. Inside. Here we have the famous bag, since obviously it was a bagged vacuum cleaner, and the motor is just below with the filters. So, I'll put this back in place, since obviously it's releasing dust that's been there for a while. It could be 50 years old, so we'll try to avoid spreading it all over the room. Here's the handle with a small fin, just like cars of that era. It was apparently stylish then. Like current models, this one came with different accessories. In this case, I received 2. There's this brush with long bristles and one with slightly shorter bristles. Well, let's be honest, we've seen better width. I'm going to add the hose extension. We also have the small opening to adjust the suction, and I'll use the shorter brush. Apparently, our vacuum cleaner is ready now. On the other hand, something must be missing since it's so low. There's no orientation, there's no little, the little wheel that lets you maneuver properly. So, here we go, let's turn it on. Okay, well, first of all, it's pretty noisy, okay? And it's sucking. So it's working really well. When it comes to coffee, cereal, rice, and confetti, it sucks them up without any problem. And I'm pretty impressed, especially for a vacuum cleaner that's literally twice my age. But when there's a large piece like polystyrene, it won't go through. We'll see if that's true with the Dyson, but I think it will be. Also quite surprising is this famous air cushion. It feels like the vacuum cleaner is resting on the floor, but that's not entirely the case. You can easily move it and it almost glides when you hold it by the handle. It's pretty impressive. Well, on the other hand, the downside is that if you lift it, the air gets blown everywhere and it spreads dust, confetti and so on. In every direction, so it's even more of a mess than before. However, the biggest drawback is its maneuverability. Not only because the cable is super short, so you'd have to unplug it and plug it back in. You can't even get through a third of a room when you want to play a game, and it doesn't have wheels either. You have to bend down each time to lift and move it, so I think it quickly causes back pain. Now, I suggest we check its noise level. For that, I bought a sound level meter. And as you can see, when I speak, it's around 60 decibels. And when nothing is happening, it's more like around 30 decibels. And now, let's see what happens. Once the vacuum cleaner is turned on, so I'll start the device right away. Ultimately, 70 decibels is reasonable. It's about the same as when I'm talking in front of the camera. It's not that disturbing. Honestly, I was expecting a lot more. For you to really understand why these vacuum cleaners made such an impact in their time, I need to set the scene for you. First of all, what you can notice is that we have a historic product since they were originally sold in this green color. And believe it or not, that wasn't a design choice at all. It was simply the cheapest paint available on the market. And that's why they used it on the first models. By the way, Hoover later switched to brown, then beige, supposedly to better hide the dust. I'll let you judge that marketing argument, and speaking of marketing, there are quite a few legends that come from that era. In the 1950s and 60s, salesmen had a rather unique sales technique. Apparently they would show up at their clients' homes, kind of like Tupperware parties, and they would come with a mysterious magic powder that they would sprinkle all over the carpets. Only their vacuum cleaners could remove it. We still don't know what it was, but it worked. Since the brand has become a real cultural phenomenon. In the United Kingdom, to hoover became a verb similar to how we use scotch as in scotched. But despite this success, they also had some crazy ideas that almost literally put an end to the company. In 1992, the United Kingdom branch launched the most disastrous marketing promotion in history. With warehouses full of unsold vacuum cleaners, they had a clever idea. Give 2 free plane tickets to Europe with each vacuum bought for £100. The offer was so successful, they decided to include flights to the United States with models at £250. They overlooked one detail: plane tickets cost more than the vacuum cleaners. The clever British quickly took advantage of the offer, with some buying multiple vacuum cleaners just for the famous tickets. Hoover believed few people would finish the complex administrative process. 200,000 people claimed their tickets for a total cost of £50 million. Protests break out, the scandal reaches Parliament, and the chief executive officer is fired. The brand takes so long to honor the tickets that Maytag, the American owner, ends up selling the European division to Candy in 1995. And desperate, the brand will even try to copy Dyson to recover, but we're not there yet. Let me take you back to the 1980s. At that time, technological advances were completely driven by the capitalist economy. I instantly imagined the aggressive marketing driven by hyperactive salesmen like in The Wolf of Wall Street. It wasn't vitamins they were promoting. By the way, I have 2 absolutely crazy stories to tell you, and I should mention that these are urban legends. But they say a lot about the consumer mentality of that time, just like Dyson today. The Rainbow brand was convinced that their customers needed to see the dirt trapped by the vacuum cleaner to judge the quality of their products. It didn't take much for some unscrupulous salespeople to come up with the brilliant idea of secretly adding ink to the filter during their demonstrations so that the water would turn completely black and prove that the vacuum cleaner was super effective. The trick was supposedly discovered by a customer who was a chemist. I can't imagine his reaction when he analyzed the water and discovered he'd been manipulated from the start. Another story, I'll tell you about it a little earlier. For industry professionals, the true battle of the 80s was the race for noise. But unlike what we want today, they aimed for the opposite. They wanted to be as loud as possible. Yes, that's right. Marketing studies showed consumers linked noise to suction power, leading to a competition to make the loudest vacuum cleaner. Fortunately, this madness stopped when the first hearing problems started to appear. And countries had to start regulating noise levels, and consumer associations had to put their foot down for it to stop. Here's one of the latest vacuum cleaners, the Dyson V15S Detect. I worked with the brand last year, so no introduction is needed. It's the current benchmark, and I couldn't pass it up. This video isn't a collaboration with them. The latest one is meant to be more maneuverable, powerful, and quieter. In any case, that's what we expect, and we'll check it in the field. Maybe we'll find surprises. Before moving to the test, I have to share the incredible story of inventor James Dyson. I'd need a separate video to cover all the details. In short, this great man revolutionized vacuum cleaners. If you didn't already know, he made 5,127 prototypes before releasing his first model, and yet his main inspiration had nothing to do with a vacuum cleaner. It was a series near his home that inspired him for the famous cylindrical shapes you find in his products today. After years of failure, when he finally succeeded, Hoover was there, ready to declare war, Dyson versus Hoover. It's a revenge story that's almost unbelievable. In 1985, Dyson offered his revolutionary cyclonic technology to Hoover for £1 million. Their response: that will never work. Obviously, there was a bit of bad faith, since it would have called into question their vacuum bag sales system, which made them a lot of money. Behind the scenes, they prepared something else. Hoover hires consultants to dismantle Dyson machines and even sends spies into their factories. And in 1993, the Triple Vortex comes out, a bagless vacuum cleaner that looks strangely similar to a Dyson, and they copied it so well that they even reproduced the flaws of the prototypes. This sparks a lawsuit with Dyson proving Hoover broke 3 of his patents. The verdict comes in 1999, almost £5 million in fines and the obligation to withdraw all their models from the market. The worst part of all this is that if they had accepted Dyson's initial offer, they would have saved millions and kept their leading position. But this story is not going to put an end to Dyson's innovative ambitions, far from it. They developed a secret project called Ghost, whose goal was to create a completely silent vacuum cleaner. By doing hundreds of tests in anechoic chambers, they succeeded, but paradoxically, since the vacuum cleaners were much too quiet, people thought they were turned off, and so it actually had a bit of a repellent effect. And at the same time, just imagine if you were vacuuming and there was no noise at all, you'd probably say the same thing. They needed some noise to reassure users, so the sound of each device is carefully designed for this purpose. Anyway, now I suggest we get back to our Dyson V15. It's one of the most recent models, and one of its special features is that it has a green laser that reveals invisible dust. It's satisfying and ensures you cover every corner. Also, the green laser color was chosen intentionally. It's the color the human eye is most sensitive to. It also has a particle motor sensor that analyzes 15,000 data points per second. We're now closer to a spaceship than a regular vacuum cleaner. We're now going to test the Dyson. So this is the V15S Detect Submarine, since it's the version that also lets you clean your floor with a special attachment. But here we're obviously going to focus on the suction part. As you can see, the famous laser reveals debris that might otherwise be invisible, especially when the floor is the same color as the food. Well, it works pretty well. No trouble removing the debris. Now we're going to try with this piece of polystyrene that didn't go through, especially in the Hoover. We can see what happened. Well, as you can see, it also got stuck just like in the Hoover. So even after 60 years, there are still the same problems. Obviously, in terms of maneuverability, it's great because it's cordless and the head is well designed, so you can really turn it in any direction. However, it doesn't pick up all the confetti. Some of them stay stuck to the floor. Look. Now I suggest we test its noise level by using it in normal mode. Oh. I thought it would be quieter than the model from 60 years ago. But in the end, it's just as noisy, maybe even noisier, since sometimes it gets close to 80 decibels, so the difference isn't huge. But anyway, I think that's a pretty interesting fact. However, there's one detail that shouldn't be overlooked, and that's the sound quality of this one. In this case, I prefer the Dyson sound. It's less harsh on my ears, and I think that's intentional. Just like the sounds that are built in when you turn it on, even though that's not really necessary. I wanted to show you this model that I also found, but it won't be for this video. This is the Birom Ideal. From what I know, it was around in the 1940s and 50s, or at least somewhere around that time. It's in a kind of cardboard box that also looks like leather, and the object itself is right here. It's extremely heavy and it looks really old. You can tell it was from another generation, so I had it delivered to me. As you can see, it doesn't have any wheels. It's resting on some kind of metal rods. It actually looks a bit like a rocket, and here we have the handles since you had to carry it all the time. It's time for the review, to be honest. I'm quite surprised since the Hoover vacuum cleaner from the 60s works very well in terms of suction. Even though it's been through a lot, it's been worn out. You might have thought it would have trouble picking up the various debris that was on the floor, but in the end, no, not at all. Its suction doesn't have much to envy compared to Dyson. However, where there seems to be a lot of improvement is in terms of user comfort. The fact that it doesn't need a bag, that you don't have to plug it into an outlet, that it's lighter and easier to handle with all the accessories that are available. Honestly, it really makes a difference. By the way, if you're interested in this topic, feel free to check out this video. I tested different vacuum cleaner models to see if the most expensive one is the most effective or if something more affordable does just as good a job.